Keller. I want to welcome you to Spanglish World Network and Her Network on Zingo TV's channel 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on respective app stores and iOS, Android devices. While you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire Sticks, Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Today, I have a very special guest near and dear to my heart. Not only have we been friends for over a decade, she has been my personal business coach that has scaled my business 3 times of what it used to be, especially during COVID. And during this time of her coaching me, we really got to know each other in more of a personal way, understanding her story. And I remember my friend Lisa, who I'm about to bring on, she wrote this book way back when, and it was called Find a Fab. And it was really about a journey of, the way that we see our bodies, the way that our psychology is, and how do we fit into the world. And especially now, there's so many clients that I'm working with now that the word fat shaming comes up. So let me just give you a little introduction of to who my favorite person is. Lisa Liberman-Wang is a business and life strategist who guides you to become even more successful personally and professionally by removing the roadblocks and providing you with proven skills and strategies to build a purposeful life and profitable business. She empowers professionals and corporations in elevating themselves and their business to 7 figures and beyond. Like I said, she is a #1 international best-selling author of the books Find a Fab and many others. And Lisa, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you and have this conversation.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, before we get started, what I'm really excited about is you just wrote a new book, right?
I did. I'm excited. It hasn't even been released yet.
When is it coming out?
It's coming out in just a couple of weeks, and it was a long time coming. I wrote my first book 12 years ago when I wrote Find to Fab, and it became a #1 bestseller. And then kind of did another book 6 years ago. Everything sat on the shelf, and it just rebirthed a new one.
I love it. What I love about you, Lisa, and this is one of the things that I've learned from you, is that you constantly give, give, give. Like you're constantly giving, because one of the things that I've known about your heart is you don't want to just succeed. You want to see the people around you succeed. And I feel that with you. I feel that in every conversation. And you guys who are out there listening to us, you guys are going to get an opportunity to hear this amazing woman's journey. And she is going to teach you guys out there about ways that you can overcome that mindset of that fat shaming. So Lisa, why don't you just tell us how, when you started to write Find a Fab, what was that all about?
Find to Fab came about not because of something I thought I would be doing. As a matter of fact, I was told almost 2 decades ago by a psychic. I don't know everybody's belief on psychics, but I was told by a psychic that I was going to write a book. I said, "No, I'm never going to write a book." I said, "I have a hard time reading them." I said, "I bought a book on speed reading and never finished it. I'm not going to write a book." And then all of a sudden, I end up writing this book. And it came about because I've spent the last 4 decades helping successful people kind of like stop hurting themselves and get over their stuff so they can succeed even more in what they were doing. And most of the time it was always around business, but I realized you are your business. And I had my own backstory where I had been super successful. I worked for companies like IBM and MCI. I had done more than $4 million in sales a year for MCI. And that they called it H.E.R. My estimated revenue was only 2 million. So I was always well above my goals. And it was at an expense. And I didn't realize that I created this pattern. And the expense I had was I would burn myself out. I'd end up dealing with depression and anxiety. I ended up with an eating disorder. And before I knew it, my dis-ease with myself became a 13-year journey of bulimia and compulsive overeating. And I thought I was an anomaly, like nobody's ever dealt with this. No, I'm the only one dealing with it. Of course, we have to be unique, terminally unique. And what I realized that I wasn't, there were so many other people that, publicly looked like they had it all together and privately were beating themselves up. And I now today have about 30 years of abstinence from hurting myself. And I've helped thousands and thousands and thousands of people do the same thing so they can succeed in all the areas of their life, not just professionally, but personally, which I think is one of the most important ones. And Find to Fab was what put it on the block. That was amazing. And I'm going to share what Fine stood for. Am I allowed to curse? I'll do a
No, we're
PG.
not allowed to curse, but
A
we're on live TV.
PG version. So Fine was how I used to feel, and that was effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional to fabulous, awesome, beautiful is where I wanted to go. And I realized I wasn't the only one that felt fine.
First of all, I just want to congratulate you on overcoming this and creating that new identity for yourself, and now being able to come back and share that journey with others, because there's a lot of times that people think that they just get into eating disorders because they don't like the way they look. Like, I work with a lot of youth, a lot of preteens, a lot of teenagers, and young adults. And they're in the world of social media now. They're constantly on social media comparing themselves to the Kardashians and everybody else, right? Which they don't even understand that the filters that these people put on them really makes them look different, because they too are suffering from that insecurity of how they see themselves in the mirror. And I the one person that comes to mind is a client that I have that is 14 years old. She is so tiny, like her waist is probably like a 20. And so when I was asking her about her eating issues, I said, so I'm not even asking your ideal weight, because I don't look at weight. I look at the way you see yourself, the way you feel about yourself internally and externally. And I said, so what, if just let's go by measurement. What if your waist is a 20 now, what do you want it to be? Lisa, she said she wanted to be a 14. I was like, so I got out my measuring tape, that I use to measure. And I said, okay, so this is how much you want your waist to be. And then I turned it and I made it like a circle. And she was like, yeah, yeah. And I said, so what will you feel like if you had that waist? And she says, I will feel so good in my body. I will feel like I look normal. I feel like I will be fit, and I feel like I will have so much energy. And my heart hurt for her, because trying to understand, like I used to say, I want other people's eyes to see the beauty in myself that I couldn't see way back when. I could not fathom what this girl was even thinking or seeing in herself.
Absolutely. So she has body dysmorphia. And the biggest challenge with that is we can tell people that no, you're beautiful and you're already skinny enough and you're probably skinnier than 99% of the population, right? And it goes back to, and it makes me remember the Barbie doll.
Mm,
Somebody literally took the Barbie doll years ago and they said, if we made her your my size in real life and put her into proportion, it was like she was a very large top, like a triple D. She had a waist of a little, like the 14-inch, and the hips, even maybe not even 1.5 times, which what it was, when you think about a beautiful woman, an hourglass figure, which is really what makes us beautiful. And they had done all this research, and it has to do a lot with, like you said, not what they're seeing on TV, the dolls they're seeing. I just went to see Avatar. I thought it was an amazing movie, but I have to be honest, I was challenged with the figures. I
mm,
literally walked out concerned, and that's the first thing I said to everyone. And they're thinking, Lisa, you missed the great show. And I'm like, I said, no, I'm really concerned that little girls, because I'm living with several right now and in a transition state, will look at that and think they should look like that. And it's not realistic.
right.
And it's scary because then that's what they're comparing themselves to, something that's a computer generated design. That's not who we are. It's not, it actually will mess up your organs and your body to ever look like that. There's no room for your organs.
And I think one thing that you and I know that in common is that in order for anyone to make any changes in their life, we have to get to their belief systems, right?
Yes.
It's definitely the belief systems that create the thought, that create the feelings that people have in certain things. And so, Lisa and I are both, coaches. And so we do understand that in order to get someone to move, we have to really understand their why behind it. Like, what is it that they really, really want? And, like you were saying, like with Avatar, these, created figures on screen, but so is Instagram, so is Snapchat, so is Facebook, right?
Yeah,
It's like all these filters. Like I remember my daughter-in-law was over one day and and I don't have Snapchat, she does. And she was pulling up all these different filters and we had so much fun with the filters, but it was fun, right? Like it wasn't realistic. Like this one app like filter made me look so tiny and skinny. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I look good here. And I think that's what these kids are doing. Like they're seeing themselves and going, yep, that's it. Now I look like her. Now I look like her.
yeah.
So, how do we start to shift that? How do we start to see? Because you said that your journey with bulimia was, if I heard you right, it was like you were burning both ends of the stick and it created a lot more of distress in your life and it showed up as depression, anxiety, and bulimia. Do
Yes.
you feel you had body dysmorphia too, or was it created from something else?
So I actually did have body dysmorphia, and when we started talking, we were talking about fat shaming, and I gave it a lot of thought because back in the day, realize this for me is over 40 years ago that it started, and my mom was fat shamed. My mom was 265 pounds.
Mm,
And she used to always say to me, though, she'd say, "Don't ever look like me." And it was very clear that if I ever got fat, that's not good, right? So don't ever look like me was the thing I heard all the time. And I'd say, don't worry, if I ever do, you can shoot me. Because it was such a bad thing. She was in so much pain mentally being heavy. Everyone in the family was like, Joan, just go on a diet or lose weight or do this. And I think that it actually made her get bigger, 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 more like if I can't get where I want to be, who the hell cares? And let me just throw caution to the wind and I'm going to eat my way through it.
mm,
And then I saw my dad, who was overweight, not like my mom, but still overweight. And neither my brother and I ever got heavy, but I didn't get heavy because I was a secret purger. So I can, stuff all my feelings in and eat and do what I've learned in my family is, food is love. And just when I'm not feeling love elsewhere, get tons of food. The thing is, it's like, don't ever look like mom. So what are you going to do? Well, you need to get rid of it.
mm.
So even back when I started this, I actually was only 110 pounds and I went down as low as 90 pounds.
Wow.
So I ended up with a sudden heart attack by the time I was 18. I was wheeled into the hospital. My dad was an engineer. I was getting on the back of his motorcycle one day. I remember it like it was yesterday. And what happened is I literally fell. I passed out. And they rushed me to the hospital. And I'm on the table and I heard something that might have heard before, but I never heard it before. And it was my dad saying, "I love you." And there was something in my head that just clicked in this moment that, oh, if you're sick, they're nice to you. That became a pivotal point in my world because I learned that when I'm in dis-ease with myself, people will be nice. Then of course it's like, well, Lisa, how were they not nice? Well, my dad was very strict and militant, and he was a good dad, but he didn't know how to be a compassionate, loving dad. And he had a lot of rules. So I thought I was in the military. And what he used to do though is he also in I don't know, I years later understood why he did it. I'm questioning if I should even say it, but my dad's nickname for me was AH, and it wasn't nice, and it was asshole. And I so much wanted to be princess. So I was like, well, if you're sick, they're nice to you. I never heard that name after that ever. And what I did see is two parents doting on me and showing me so much love that I so wanted forever and never really got the way I needed it. And it became what today I understand in psychology, I've been studying this for over 40 years, is secondary gain. And
Yep.
secondary gain is having a problem for one thing, but you're getting something else as a benefit of it. So the secondary gain was, one, I was using food to feel better now. The secondary gain is my family became very nice to me.
Yeah, I see that a lot too with some of the clients that I work with that, have anxiety. I have a lot of clients, like a lot of the clients that I work with, they have no self-worth, no self-esteem at young ages. So the parents call me, I work with them. And one of the symptoms that comes along with this is the anxiety.
Yeah.
And anxiety, as you and I know, and we're going to let the listeners know, it's the uncertainty in something. It's the unknowing of something that creates that anxiousness in you, and your body reacts to it in different ways. So, actually, a couple clients, this just happened recently too, this week actually, the kids call their parents and say, I need you to pick me up. Like, I can't do this. And so what do the parents do? They go and pick them up. And then they get to come home and they go get some fast food to eat. And then mom or dad sits with them. And all of a sudden, the child feels secure because now they know they have a absolute certainty in knowing that if I'm having a panic attack, mom or
Yeah.
dad will come get me, and then I'll be safe and secure, and then life will be good. And so I actually called one of my clients out on this with lots of love. I said, let me ask you a question. What if your parents didn't pick you up? And she's like, I mean, what do you mean they wouldn't pick me up? Of course they would pick me up. And I said, but what if they didn't? I mean, I don't know. I said, would you die? Oh, well, no, I wouldn't die. Well, then what would happen? I mean, I guess I would just have to get over it and go on the day. And I said, interesting. I
Mhm.
said, but then what would you make that mean? And she's like, well, then obviously they didn't care about me.
Mm.
Uh-huh. So again, the secondary gain is that if I have anxiety, then I have my parents that, will love me and come get me and I feel safe. And then like I have another client who feels at a young age, her early teens, that she needs a boyfriend. She has no problem in life when she has a boyfriend. Life is great. She follows the rules. Everything is wonderful. As soon as they break up, she's hospitalized again because she's having temper tantrums and she wants to kill herself and she's taking Tylenol or whatever. And the parents are like, oh my gosh, she's bipolar. She's bipolar. That's what the therapists are saying, the psychiatrist. And I said, no, she's not. Bipolar doesn't come to you when your boyfriend breaks up with you. I said, can you give me another time any of these behaviors have shown up when it was not related specifically to a boy? And they're like, well, no. And I said, of course not. Of course not. What happens is when she does not feel loved, seen, or heard by the boyfriend anymore, she creates these behaviors because then everybody gives her that attention of being seen and loved and secure again. And I said, once again, secondary gain.
Yes.
So it's interesting because I think that when kids are having this body dysmorphia, it's more than just the way that they're seeing themselves. Like there's that secondary gain that they're getting from it as well.
Absolutely. When you think about it, everything is a pattern or a program. And if we're not getting our needs met in one way, we're going to do something else to get it met.
Right.
So that's actually what happens. And a lot of times, understanding when it comes to body dysmorphia, questioning, am I enough, other things like that, we're absolutely digging to the point where we are only seeing what's wrong. We're not seeing what's right.
Absolutely.
And that's the piece that gets even harder. And body dysmorphia is real. And unfortunately, the only way to change it is to change the inner dialogue. So a lot of people will say, well, just stop doing it. Yes, but I always use the expression, if I'm going to take something off the plate, I'm going to put something on it. So
Correct.
what am I putting on it? And what has to go there, one is the attention has to stop being about weight. And that's the biggest mistake most people do. And the attention has to stop being about the symptom. So if you're dealing with children that have body dysmorphia, eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, compulsive overeating, there's even the opposite. There's so many different variables right now today. I think they made it into 10, which is really just an eating disorder. What you actually will find is that when you make it about the symptom, the dis-ease they have with themselves, the eating disorder, you're not ever dealing with the problem. The problem is what caused them to get there. The problem is what you just described, Veenu, is they don't feel loved. They don't feel seen. They're looking to have attention. They want someone just to hug them and tell them how wonderful they are. And
Right.
they also need to know that they're okay without having to do something. Think about it. When our children are born, they're perfect. They're perfect. We love them exactly the way they are. And then as they get older, all of a sudden there's conditions that I'll love you if. So if these children learn the conditions of what they have to do for love and they're not able to fulfill that, they're going to find other ways to get their needs met. And if their needs are met, negative or positive, it's not like they're discerning, oh, this is not a good way to get my needs met. They're just finding out, oh, if I do this, they're going to pick me up from school. If I do this, they're going to do that. So they have learned behaviors to get these needs met, but they may not be serving them. That's the big difference, is to
Right.
see, is it a benefit? And if you're a parent dealing with a child, or even if you have it, because I found a lot of times I'd have moms even call me to help with their kids, and then I go, well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. What's your story? Like, I want to know, like, what did they learn from you that they're doing? Look, how did I learn that from my mom? My mom was a compulsive overeater, but I didn't want to be big like her, so I became a compulsive overeater. I just got rid of it. So
Right.
I found a way to do it differently. I thought better, right? Not better. But the piece there is that we have to really give our kids and ourselves attention, not for what we're doing that's not serving us, but positive attention in another direction. So we stop making it about the food. We stop making it about the weight. We stop making it about all that stuff. We make it about the individual.
Right. Right. And there's another, like, I'm thinking about my own story. When I was little, I was bullied a lot. And one of the things I was bullied on was how skinny I was. And back in the 80s, we had this huge crisis in the world in Ethiopia, and there was a famine. And it was like a big word that we heard on every news channel was the famine in Ethiopia. People are starving. We had to do like feed the world, hands across America. We did all this stuff to help Ethiopia, right? And people would walk around and they would like pull the skin out on their neck and they'd be like, who am I? Who am I? I'm Veenu with a piece of rice stuck in my throat. And these kids would constantly say that to me. And I remember, like it was yesterday, coming back from the community pool with my best friend Tiffany. And I was in the bathroom looking at my body with this little pink and black bikini I had on. And I sat there just crying and praying to God, why don't you just make me fat? If you can
Mm.
just make me fat, then I'll be happy. If you can make me fat, like if you love me, God, you'll make me fat. Like just make me fat. Because I thought that if I could look the way people wanted me to look, then they wouldn't bully me. And if they didn't bully me, then they would like me. And if they like me, then I would be accepted and I would be worth something. Right. So I would eat everything. I remember even in high school, I would go, I played field hockey. And at lunch, I would go to my favorite place, Del Taco. All my friends that are listening to this, they'll be like, yep, Beanie loves Del Taco. And I would eat lunch there. And then on the way back to school, I would stop at McDonald's and get 2 cheeseburgers to keep in my locker. So right after practice, I was stuffing my face with that. Then I would go home and eat dinner. Like I was doing everything to gain weight. So it was like the opposite, but yet it's the same thing. I just wanted to be worth something. Like I didn't have that self-worth and that self-love. And so I went the opposite.
Yes. I always go back to what you learn in psychology is the mind doesn't know the difference between what's real or vividly imagined. So if you tell yourself something often enough, you'll believe it to be true. So you believed I needed to be heavier to be loved and worthy. Somebody else may feel like I need to be skinny to be loved and worthy. And you tell yourself it so much that it's like your unconscious mind's job is actually to make you right.
Right.
Like, wow, that's crazy. Like, and it doesn't have a decipher key. Is this a good thing to help you make right or a bad thing? It just says, oh, that's what she wants or he wants. Let's do that. And so, well, no, it's not serving us.
Yeah. I always tell people, I said, your brain does not want you to lie to it. So we will always find it to be the truth. It'll find evidence to support what you are thinking and believing.
Hmm.
And so, it goes to, if you feel you are broken, you're going to figure out why you're broken. You're going to see every reason why you're broken. If you think that you're amazing and you're so good at what you do in your life, you're going to find every reasons to see why that is true. So, and I think that this is a key component is number one, as parents, we really need to start the conversation where we're creating a healthy relationship with food. I think that that is a key thing. Like if they're hearing us, like my daughter the other day, I was in the kitchen, I was doing something, and I'm like, oh God, I can't eat that. I will get so fat if I eat that. And she's like, Mom, you're not fat. And I'm like, well, thank you. And I know that I can't eat all those cookies because I will get fat. She's like, oh, Mom, you don't need to worry about your weight. And I was like, all of a sudden having this conversation with my 10-year-old, I'm like, what am I saying to her? Like unconsciously, I was actually having the conversation with the fridge, by the way, not my daughter. And she chimed in, right? And so again, and that's why I on my show, I'm very open and vulnerable because I think that people need to learn from the experiences that we have. And so this just happened last week. And I was like, I just had a conversation with my 10-year-old about being fat. What seeds am I planting in her head now that she can't enjoy cookies because she might get fat? Because that's what mom is saying. And our kids do look up to us. They want they want us to be their role model.
Well, and
So
that's what I was going to say is that, one of the things you do great is with the reparenting and redefining parenting is that you're not just working with the children, you're working with the parents too. And the piece that has to happen is the same thing I said before is the apple doesn't fall far because they're already being influenced by what's around them. And it's not even what we say because words are only 7%. It's about what we do that they're watching. And that was a big piece that I saw and I still continue to see, helping people who deal with the eating disorders or sexual abuse and other things that come is there's a lot of reasons why people can stay in dis-ease. It actually is easy to stay. It's harder to understand and change the meaning of everything until you, one, create awareness about it. And you just said, your daughter called you out. I was like, okay, well, where? I just did that. I'll put money on it if we were to put a mic in everybody's home and we listen to what everybody is saying, the parents and everything, and they're saying, well, I don't understand where they get that. Within a week, they'll know exactly where they get it all.
it's like that's why when I do my my in-home turnaround where I'm living with families for 4 days, I've had people ask, like, you live with the families? I'm like, oh yeah, because I want to hear where all these patterns are developed from. And a lot of these things are happening, when we think we're turning off the lights and the kids are coming out and the parents are like, oh, okay, well, okay, one more night you could sleep in my room. And the parents are telling me the next day, I don't know why they're sleeping in my room. Like, I have no idea. Like, I keep telling them not to be in my room. Well, that night when you said, well, okay, one more night, their brain can't decipher if this is one more night or tomorrow is one more night or the next one more night, right? So it's the same thing is that, you bring such good awareness to that, Lisa, is we need to be cautious about what we're saying because what we say becomes our internal language.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. And I wanted to point out one more thing that you said is that when you take something off the plate, you got to put something on the plate. One of the things that I explain to my parents when they're helping their children is if you want to take away a behavior, you got to replace it with a behavior, but you got to figure out the need first. Like you were saying, what's the need? And if the need of that negative behavior was creating that fulfillment of love and connection at a level 10, and you all of a sudden replace it with spending time with them 1 hour a week on Sundays. Yes, you're giving them love and connection, but at the scale of what? At the scale of 3, not 10. So
Mm-hmm.
what will they do? They'll resort back to what they got the love and connection at a level 10 at. So we have to be very careful that when we are putting something back on the plate, it has as much value, if not more, of what the reward was that that child was getting. Would you agree with that?
100%, 100%. Dr. Virginia Satir years ago, who was a huge influence to Dr. Bandler, who created NLP. I'm a licensed master NLP practitioner and trainer as well. She used to say that when people are stressed, they'll return to familiar. So if it's not at the same level of 10 and it's not really fulfilling them at that same level, anything that takes them off kilter will make them go back to what they know. because that's like the Linus blanket that feels comforting and secure. So how do we give them something that makes them feel comforted and secure at that same level if we're taking it as something else away?
Right.
So
And
great.
it's interesting also because like a lot of therapists, and I'm not here to knock down therapists. There's amazing psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists out there. I have some that are some of my greatest friends. So I'm not saying that I'm just putting a caveat about what I'm about to say about coping skills. When I was hospitalized at 15 and I was in a psych hospital for emotional whatever because I was suicidal, um, they wanted to give me coping skills. And here's what I can tell you through my experience is that coping skills gives an underlining meaning of I don't have the authority to change this. I can't change it, so I must cope with it.
Mm.
So the weather, I cannot change. It is cold here in North Carolina this morning. I cannot change it. But so I have to cope with it. I have to cope with what I'm giving because there's no possibility of changing. But when a child has an eating disorder, or a child is harming themselves, or a child is depressed and they're constantly isolating, and any behavior you want to change, to give a coping skill is giving the child an illusion. Well, I can't change this, so I must cope with it. And there's something that you said that was very important, Lisa. You said, to deal with the symptoms is one thing, but you've got to get to the underlying cause of it if you're really going to get rid of it. And so to give someone a coping skill in that moment is a great distraction to change their focus. But if we don't go further in getting to the cause of what's creating the symptoms that we're avoiding, then we're never going to change it, you know? And so what I do in my coaching is really help parents to dissect what's really going on so we can get to the cause. Because, you know, I know that, and then you said it, that you're, when you would binge on food, you would have to release it. It was a release for you. But I'm also taking, I mean, I'm taking a shot in the dark, but it wasn't just a release of food, it was a release of other emotions and stuff at the same time. Like,
Every emotion. It was a release of everything. Food is a metaphor. And, you know, that's food is a symptom. Think about this. There are people out there, especially with children today, cutting, they're doing vaping, they're doing drugs, they're doing food. I actually chose what I call the good girl disease because I never did pot, never did drugs, never, because I was too afraid of my dad. So it was like food. No one got upset about food. I could eat. No one's going to yell at me, but they did yell at me because I was eating everything. But but the point is it was the good girl disease. So I think that when we look at it, it'll be whatever it is the escape, and realize that those escapes and those things that you pick are only to feel better now. I mean, think about this. It doesn't change anything. The problems don't go away. Your life doesn't get better after you're done with it. It's just in that moment, it numbs you enough to feel better now. So the next question is, well, how can you feel better now without hurting yourself? Like
right,
without harming yourself. And that's where that we need to be more resourceful. That's where we need to identify, what are you trying to feel better from? What's that inner dialogue that you put in there that you think you're running away from, or this is going to pacify or clean up or change for you? Because when you come out of it, you still have the same problem. Nothing changed.
right, right. And that's why these coping skills are just a distraction until we can get to the root cause. Like, so, like you were saying, like cutting, I work with a lot of clients that have self-harmed. I say that because working with me, we've gotten them to the cause of it to recreate their identity so they don't need that release anymore because they're not feeling the pain anymore. You know, they're not feeling the pain of not being enough. They're not feeling the pain of not being seen and heard. So there's nothing to cut. They're actually learn how to like themselves so they wouldn't want to hurt themselves,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it was interesting because when I was watching a show the other day, and on the show, the child was self-harming, and she's like, I don't want to self-harm. So her parents take her to a therapist, and the parents give her a journal and a rubber band. And the therapist says, put the rubber band around your wrist, and every time you want to self-harm, I want you to flick yourself. I was beside myself. And I'm like, this is this is because kids watch shows, right? So how many kids are like, oh my gosh, I'm self-harming too. I don't want to tell my parents. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start wearing a rubber band on my arm and start flicking myself. Well, guess what? I had a client a few years ago That's how she was self-harming. She would take her hair tie, because all girls, like I mean, I still do. I wear a hair tie around my wrist. So does my daughter, to throw her hair up when we need to. And she would take it and she would flick it until it would cut her. And that is how she self-harmed. She's like, I would walk down the halls of my high school just flicking the heck out of my wrist, and nobody even thought about it. So it was just another way to hide. And yet it was a coping skill that therapists are giving to their kids. And I was like, I cannot believe this. Like, I was yelling at the TV and my husband comes in, he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, this is just wrong. Like, well, they can't hear you. I know they can't hear me, but it's wrong, right? We can't, instead of just saying like, why is she in so much pain that she feels she needs to hurt herself? In that same show, you had a girl that was taping her thighs, another girl that was throwing up. It's like, our kids are seeing these things through shows.
Yes.
And not getting the solution out of it either.
And what's ironic about it is I was hospitalized 6 times over 13 years. And I learned more about how to hurt myself in the rooms in the hospitals and their groups and their other stuff that I didn't even know about beforehand. So I had never put my fingers down my throat to throw up. I had ulcers. And back then they put me on Tagamet and other things, but I had literally was just it started out that I just couldn't keep food in my body. It wasn't me trying to do this. And they said, oh, you have control over it. I was like, I have control over it. Oh, wow, that's interesting. I can do something with this. Or I heard other people, and I don't even want to give any ideas or suggestions here. I won't do it. But other people did things so they can throw up, or they can do different things. And I would sit there and judge. That's a stupid way to do it. I wouldn't do it that way. I would, like I say, that doesn't sound like a good idea. And it was offered up in these rooms. So a lot of times in traditional support rooms, which is what I was sent to back then, they didn't know what we know today, Veenu. I mean, there's neuroscience and human psychology has been around since, 1400s, 1500s. I don't think people know what we know today and how easy it is to make these shifts. They just know traditional means.
Correct.
And that's what my family did for me, because that's all they knew. And I think a lot of people are still in the antiquated world of, how do we put a Band-Aid on something versus how do we redesign it and shift it?
Right. And it's funny that you say that, because when I went into the hospital, when I was 15, I was not hurting myself. When I got out of the hospital, I was a self-harmer. Like, I learned that there.
Yeah.
And at first, when I was watching this girl do it, I was like, okay, I'm in the twilight zone. Like, where did my mom send me? Next thing you know, I try it because I got really sad one day, and it released the pain in me where I could actually breathe again. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm part of that. Like, that feels good now. I know why she does it. And I came out doing it. I came out smoking. I didn't go in smoking. I came out smoking. And it's like all the behaviors I picked up. And I'm not saying that all of hospitalizations and all that, I'm not putting those down at all. I'm just saying that, like Lisa and I are saying, that there was a traditional way that parents could try to support us, but now that we know better, we can do better.
Absolutely. And my parents used to say they did the best they could. And I understand. And my parents loved me so much they would have done anything to help take care of me. I think that they just didn't know. And I don't think that even society as a whole understood that we can address it in a very different way. And they placate or they end up buying into stories, especially when it's children, because you're afraid, what if they do something and really harm themselves? Then, oh my, that would be the worst. And it would. The truth is that right now, the way social media is, society is, and everything else, people are feeling even adults feeling their self-worth based on a like or a love on social media, like, you care about me. And I think it's not until we change our value system of what's important, and again, make the individual important, not what they do, but just who they are. And you're already perfect. You're born perfect, and let them really understand that. I was just with my friends, and their daughter ended up sending them a message. She had just gotten a backpack, and it was supposed to be a ski backpack. And she says, I'm so embarrassed. Everyone says that this is what, da, 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 da. And it was like, who's everyone first? who's everyone? And what are you talking about? The family just spent $400 on something for her, for this thing. And she's like so mortified that, oh, it's not the right one. And everyone's talking about it. It's like, who's everyone? You're 13
Right.
years old. Are you really basing your life on everyone? And
Yes, they
so
are. I mean,
I
that is,
guess,
it's their social group. There's 5 people in their social group, and that's everyone. That's 8 billion people in the world. 8 billion people think she bought the wrong backpack because the 5 people that are close to her that she wants to impress and be a part of have stated it. It's a
yeah.
representation. And
But
you
this is
know,
where we need to build their self-esteem enough that they don't need all that stuff for sure.
absolutely. So, Lisa, we have just about 10 minutes left. I'm curious, what are some strategies that we can share with parents that are really concerned? Because, see, I'm going to tell you, as a parent, my job, I feel, is to protect my child, to keep them safe. The minute that they're hurting themselves or someone's hurting them, the mama bear comes out in me. Like, number one, I want to protect them. But number two, we do worry about, like, what are people going to say? Like, I wasn't a good parent, I'm not a good parent. And then we start giving that negative self-talk. So I would love to help our listeners learn some amazing tips from you. So if they're dealing with this for themselves, like you said, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So to start with themselves first, but what are some tips that we can share with the listeners that if they're dealing with this, if they're watching their kid go through this, if they're going through this, what are some immediate steps that they can take to start to get some change in their life?
Some things you can do immediately is do a checkup from the neck up. And I love doing this. I actually use every time of a meal to sit down before you just go and eat is ask yourself the question, how do I feel in this moment? So are
Uh-huh.
you feeling happy or overwhelmed? Are you rushing? Or what's going on? Do a checkup from the neck up, because most of the time when we're in a point where we're not serving ourselves, it's because we're not present. So grounding yourself back to the present is an important thing. The other is, I really believe that the self-talk is critical. As I said, your mind doesn't know the difference what's real or vividly imagined. So if you tell yourself something often enough, you believe it to be true. I believe we should do an inventory of all these great things about us. So when you show up at your personal best, what's unique and amazing about you? And it can be, I'm fabulous, awesome, beautiful, amazing. It's like all these different things. But create 50 positive things about you that every morning you can do that, and have your kids do it too. Here's what's going to happen. Just like Dr. Emoto, if you ever heard the story about how he took water from the Japanese sea and he talked badly to it, and then he talked nice to it, and they showed the water that was talked badly to calcified and the water that talked nicely to created beautiful crystals. Well, we're made up 80% water. If you don't think about the fact that what we're putting in is what's coming out, then you're mistaken. So filling the cup, it takes 20 positive statements to counteract one negative.
Mhm.
So tell yourself all these beautiful things about yourself, and then have your kids do it too. There's an awesome video, and I'm sure you've seen it, Veenu, with Jessica, little
Yeah.
Jessica doing her
Yes.
affirmations, right? And this little one, she's standing on the top of the sink, and she's doing, I'm this, I love my house, I love my sister, I love my, you know, it might seem funny and it might seem silly. It works. So fill the cup. Give yourself positives. The other thing is to change the dialogue in the head of what's not what's wrong, but what's right.
Mhm.
And I love having my clients to create a what am I grateful for? But here's the piece on the what am I grateful for. Every night they have to create 5 new things they're grateful for, and you can't repeat. So if I say I'm grateful to have a nice bed to sleep in, I'm grateful for a roof over my head, I'm grateful to have a friend in Veenu, I can't say that again tomorrow. I need new ones, right? So that's really the piece. So find things that you're grateful for and add them into your repertoire. So there's so many things you can do, but those are some quick ones.
I love that. I love the mirror talk. I love the gratitude. I had one of our friends, our mutual friend, Tony Rodriguez, on here not too long ago. And he was talking about the 3 questions of gratitude is like, what am I grateful for? What should I be grateful for? And what could I be grateful for? And
Hmm.
those 3 questions, um, just really bring you into gratitude. And it really makes us realize that we're not owed anything. Life doesn't owe us anything. To be in the moment and be so present with what we have. I mean, being able just to be here on with you on screen, like who would have imagined 20 years ago we could do this? you know, to have a little computer device in our hand every day so we can communicate with people. And we don't have to be like, oh my gosh, I'm late. Let me run to a payphone. Oh, wait, I don't have quarters. Maybe I can make a collect call to tell you I'm running late, right? How far we've come in our life. And I hear that story that you share about your friend's 13-year-old. And it's like, this is where we brought our kids. When we say, when did the world become entitled? We made it that way.
Yeah.
We have to take ownership. And it's kind of like what you and I were saying is, what are we saying that we don't even realize we're saying in our homes? What seeds are we planting in our kids? Or what are we giving them? I'm watching 16-year-olds have $125,000 cars at 16. How can they even fathom the value of that to appreciate? I don't even have a $125,000 car right now. And to be honest, I don't think I want one. But my point is that I worked so hard in my life that if I did get it, it wasn't about the car. It was about, what have I done in my life? How many lives have I impacted to be able to afford something like this? How does a 16-year-old even get that in their mind? So it's not even what we're saying all the time. It's the actions we're doing so that everyone, the 5 people, feel they're accepted. If we really want to do our kids justice, let's teach them how to feel accepted without material things.
Mm-hmm.
Let us teach our kids how to feel the love and their worth inside of them without having the $400 backpack or the $125,000 vehicle on their 16th birthday. Let's come together and make a cognitive shift in the world through parenting. And that's why this is called Redefine Parenting, because I'm bringing people like Lisa onto the show to tell us that we don't have to live in the past to see that's the solution. We have morphed into so much more to where we're at in 2023. So if that is the truth, then we need to do more. We need to stop relying on old things, or take what did work from the old and make it even better in the new. One of the things, Lisa, that I adore about you, that you helped me change by coaching me for over a year in my business, but you also dealt with the psychology of it too, like where the blocks were in my life, that I was creating the blocks in my story in my business. And one of the things that you taught me is, live more in the solution than you live in the problem. Really identify, and it's what William Whitecloud says too, who was just my guest a few weeks ago too. It says, what's your end result? Like, what's the end result you want? So now let's just be in that end result. So see your child healthy. See your child loving themselves. See your child loving the health in their body. Discuss with them what healthy looks like to them. Not just looks like, but what does healthy feel like to them?
Mm-hmm.
There has to be that emotional attachment to what your child is trying to accomplish with inside of their body. It's not just what they're seeing in the mirror. Would you agree with that, Lisa, or what would you add to that?
I absolutely agree with everything you shared. It's all about, loving yourself as you are, perfectly imperfect.
I love it. I love it. Okay, well, this is about it for our show, Lisa. If you could leave our guests with any special nugget, what would you want them to know here? Again, can we just talk about your book for a second? Because I'm so proud of you.
Well, this book, actually, if you want it, I'm offering it here for free. You can just go to if you want the ebook, go to ebook.findtofab.com and download it. I'm sure you're going to get plenty of nuggets. It's an easy read. And I actually have a new book coming out. If you're an entrepreneur, coach, or business owner, you might want to get this. I'm telling you, actually, it's not even available yet. So they're going to get it earlier than everybody else, and go to How to Build a 7-Figure Coaching Business. And it'll help you with whatever business you're growing. We're just making it specific for coaches. And the nugget I'd leave would be to remember to fly. And fly is first love yourself.
Oh, Lisa, that's so beautiful. And I just want to tell you guys, Lisa's the real deal. You definitely want to get How to Build a 7-Figure Coaching Business, because she really helped me to design mine personally. So please get out there. get her Find a Fab. There's amazing tips and strategies in there because that's what Lisa does. She gives because she wants to make everybody else just as successful as she has. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here. If you are finding value in this conversation here on our show, please join our Facebook Redefine Parenting group for even more tips and conversations. Do someone you know a favor and share my group with them as well so they too can hear what they need to in order for them to feel supported in their parenting journey. This show can also be heard on Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out www.spanglishworld.ca for all your news and programming. Spanglish World, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it.